Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Hands on SAP Dev, another episode. So exciting, second of the year. I'm here in a marina, Limeview Marina, and it's very cold. Good morning to Rudolph. Good morning to Transistor as well. For a brilliant name. Excellent. Welcome everybody, especially those who are joining live, but of course welcome to all those who are watching the replay as well. This is part 2, as you can see from the, no, wait a minute there, as you can see from the number there. This is part 2 of a 3-part series, just digging in a little bit into CAP Node.js plugins. So we had the first part last week, where we just generally looked at how the plugin mechanism worked, and we understood that we needed to create an npm package with a CDS-plugin .js file, and we did that. Oh, I've gone out of focus there. There we go. A CDS plugin file. This week, in this part, we're going to do a bit of a slightly random, hopefully interesting exploration together of the running service. Okay, I'll explain a little bit more about what I mean with that. And we're going to do some introspection, which just sounds a very grand word, but basically it's about sort of programmatically looking inwards, introspect, to look inwards, literally from the Latin, at the details of the service that is running and the component parts of that service. For example, the entities within the service and the elements within the entities and the details of the elements, so that we can understand a little bit better how we will programmatically be able to get to and do something with the bits of our service that we want our plugin to affect. Okay, does that make sense? Let me know if that makes sense. Good morning to AP in, I think are you in Dusseldorf, if I remember rightly? And also, I'm looking at my thing over here again. And good morning to you, HP. Good morning to you in Mannheim. One of my favorite cities. And Javier, good morning to you in, are you in somewhere in Spain? I can't remember. Oh my goodness. Christian Drum in the house. Good morning from snowy Aachen. Oh, that reminds me. In fact, let me switch to the main scene. Oh, there we go. Don't want that. Wait. Wait a minute. I've just realized I need to switch to my other display. I've been so busy this morning. Low resolution. There we go. That's it. Try that. Hopefully okay. By the way, while it's what's going on here? There we go. Fine. That should. Oh, there we go. Am I in the main? Am I still here? By the way, let me know. Let me know in the chat. I just killed Streamlabs desktop. So please put in the chat, somebody. What does that exclamation mark mean? From nice and sunny Barcelona, there we go. Excellent. I don't know what the exclamation, I've got an exclamation mark on my thing here. I don't know what that means. But we'll find out. We'll find out. DJ, what are you doing? Good afternoon from India. Why is that? Yeah, let me know, please. Somebody type in the chat if you can hear this message. I'm looking at the replay of the live stream so far. Oh, I'm back. Okay, thanks, Javier. I'm back. I was sorting out my display and I closed Streamlabs desktop, so I stopped streaming. Oh my goodness! But luckily, because of the stream key, it's the same stream key. Anyway, DJ, what an idiot! Thank you. Oh, you see my YouTube too. Perfect. Okay. So yeah, talking of snowy Aachen. I'm in a marina right now. There's me on my boat right now. I took this photo yesterday. So the basin, the canal basin here, where we're all moored, is frozen over, and of course that is a nice solid surface upon which the snow can land and remain. So that's what it looks like right now. Outside my window. There we go. That's me. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Transistor. Thank you, Javier. And good morning also to Helmut in Brunswick. Moin to Helmut and Vishal. Good afternoon to you in India. And yeah, okay. So thanks. Sorry about the idiot thing there. So we've got the latest YouTube developer news. Where's that there? Put that there. Put in the chat. Yes, it is quite cold. It's about -7. It's not too bad. It's actually quite a nice dry cold, if that makes sense. So there's STP developer news. So where we are, because I want to sort of dive in straight away. Good morning from the highway to Dortmund. Highway to Dortmund. Is that like? Are you referencing AC/DC there, Matthias? Traffic jam. Okay. Well, don't crash or anything. Just concentrate on the driving, Matthias. Anyway, so last week we did the how things work. This week we're going to be using the REPL. So I want lots of comments and help and questions and everything in the chat. We're going to sort of explore this together. So this is where we left off last week. We've got this bookshop service with 2 entities. And we've got this things entity. I think, did I add that before? I can't remember. But basically that's there to make it deliberately more tricky for us to pick out the right entities with the right annotations. We haven't got any annotations yet. When we come to introspect. So that things there is just there to have another entity with an element. It doesn't really matter what it is. So that we can sort of contrast an entity with an element that we will be decorating, annotating. Well, let's do it right now, okay? Well, before we do it, let me show you what we've got so far. CDS watch, and we can see here we've got our starting up message from our loud package that we created last week, okay? So that's where we got to. Okay, fine. So and why is it called loud? Because, in terms of trying to keep things simple, all I want to do is build with you a plugin that will uppercase the string values of elements in entity records when we output them. Okay, I'll give you an example. So if I go up here, and if I say, in fact, I'll just type it there, right? Insert loud. There we go. Let's format that. There we go. So this plugin will operate on and do something with things that are annotated with our special annotation loud. Okay, so this already tells us a lot. It tells us how relaxed, how open, how straightforward things are in terms of CDS models, and so we can add annotations that don't even exist in terms of what CAP as a framework delivers out of the box. Okay, which is really helpful. So let me just save that, and of course that's fine. Things will work if I bring up another prompt here. In fact, I might make that one smaller. Bring up another prompt and run that R thing there. It's, that R thing is just this curl command, just to go and get the books, right? Just as a little test. Things work, it's not as if things will explode if we have this sort of quote unquote unrecognized annotation in our CDS model. Let's have a look, actually, before we carry on then, let's have a look what that looks like in terms of when the model is compiled, and then we'll dive into the REPL. So let me know in the chat how many of you have used the REPL, use it on a regular basis, or just dabble in it. How many folks have seen the REPL? And let me know what you think about it as well, because I think from talking to some people, it sometimes comes across as a little bit a little bit not scary, but I'm not quite sure what I should be doing in the REPL. Now I'm looking at folks like Christian, I know you're a big Python programmer, and of course Python has a REPL as well. So Christian, let me know what what your experience of the Python REPL is. So Vishal says, used it a lot for CQL. Exactly. Oh, fantastic. We might get into a bit of CQL if I stop talking. It's only 8:10. That's good. So let me go across to here and CDS compile. right? Let's just do that. And we can see Christian Drum using it a lot. Fantastic. And yes, in Python as well. Brilliant. Okay, thank you. So it's good actually that we're sort of a little bit familiar with the REPL, and hopefully after the end of this session, we'll be even more familiar. And Helmut is using it sometimes as well. I'm going to take my my SAP developer's hat off now because it's warming up a bit. I've put the fire on this morning. We can see here on the left-hand side, we've got obviously the CDL, the conceptual definition language, CDS model basically, and we have the compiled version of the CDS model in CSN, season, core schema notation. There's the JSON representation of that. And we can see here we've got the compiled, it's been compiled into a number of definitions of different kinds. Kind is an important word here, or an important property. Kind. Bookshop is a service. This bookshop.books is an entity, and so on, right? Oh, so but also yesterday in Terraform. Ah, excellent. Mostly for testing small code snippets and or debugging. That's exactly what we hope to use the REPL here for as well. And Transistor says, I love that name. Trial and error. Exactly. REPL is all about sucking it and seeing. Suck it and see. Let's have a look. Let's try this thing out, right? By the way, I mentioned that this is obviously the JSON representation. If we were to compile to YAML representation, we get the same season, but just represented in a different format, YAML. Anyway, so let's dive in now. I'll make this a little bit wider. We'll keep that there so we can sort of keep that in mind. CDS REPL. Okay, we can also invoke it with CDS R. Now, also with if you've been looking or watching the Art and Science of CAP episodes with Daniel Hutzel. Good morning, Thomas, in Canada. Good, very early morning, I think. I'm not even sure what's going on. So welcome, Thomas. You'll see that in 8.6, the CDS REPL got a couple of really cool features: dash run and dash use. We might use, there's a bit of a typo there, but that's already fixed in the next release. That should say QL, not XL. The run, we may remind me somebody to try and use the run, okay, a bit later on. But before we run, we want to walk. I see what I did there. Let's just do the standard thing that I think some of you will be familiar with. So let's just clear that and CDS REPL. Now, if we have a look, oh, by the way, if you do a .help, which is the CDS REPL is based upon the Node.js standard REPL with extra goodness and magic. And so you'll see that there are some standard Node.js REPL commands, but also the CDS REPL has extra CAP related commands injected into it, like .inspect and .run, for example, right? Anyway, if we have a look at CDS, right, what do we get? So CDS, we always get that in the REPL as a global, okay? And at the moment, we're not running any servers or anything, and so the CDS sort of facade, because that's the word that's used in the documentation in CAPIA, is the front door to pretty much everything. So we can, for example, have CDS .home, which I think we looked at in last week, did you? CDS .roots, all these different sort of standard, I'm going to use the word symbol, which is probably the wrong word to use because it's a loaded term in JavaScript specifically, but these sort of standard constants, let's use the word constant. We've also got the CDS env, which is massive, right? CDS.env.roots. I think that's one of the things that Nico and I discussed during the keynote, in our section of the keynote where we talked about the CAP thing. Anyway, we get that. But if we look at the rest of CDS, now we've sort of said, compile together the env, bring together the effective environment. It's gone and done that sort of on demand when I said CDS.env, and now the CDS facade is bigger, right? But before, let me scroll up. Is it scroll upable? Yeah, the CDS facade at the start was. I'm already going off piste. I was like, well, I had this. Anyway, yeah, it's quite. Let me know if it's interesting. The CDS facade at the start, the env wasn't even there. So when we did CDS home, that was a sort of a built-in. But when we did CDS env, it had to go and gather this effective configuration and store it in, and make it accessible via the facade. So now we have here CDS. There's env all of a sudden. Okay, so this is quite large, and one of the things that we saw in the .help is the .inspect, which is one of the magic extra commands that's been injected to make it sort of a CDS, a cap sort of focused REPL. So we can say in .inspect, and we'll come back to this as CDS, right? If we do that, we get the same thing. Because if we say .inspect, I'm not quite sure like that. Oh, on its own, the defaults, we have a default depth, how deep into the nesting it goes. And the depth obviously being a Schnapszahl. Somebody in the chat explain to the rest of the people in the chat, please. Somebody in Germany explain what a Schnapszahl is for those folks. I've just seen Antonio. Good morning. Sorry for the delay in saying good morning to you as well. So somebody put in the chat what a Schnapszahl is. It's quite interesting, and you'll notice the Schnapszahlen everywhere in cap is brilliant. Anyway, if we say .inspect CDS and depth equals 0, no depth, we just get a nice compressed top level view, and we can sort of increase that to depth equals 1, for example, and we get a slightly larger version, right? Going back to yes, thank you, Transistor. Exactly, and it's also maybe 44, and also hopefully it'll explain the Schnaps part and the card playing part as well. So if we go back to depth 0, we will see here that we've got this services property. We've also got model property DB, and they're all undefined. That's because right now we've not got any cap server running in the context of the REPL. So let's do that now or next. CDS, if we say const. In fact, I'll do it simply first. CDS.test or await CDS.test. You can look up the documentation for this. Basically, it starts a cap server. Okay, and the value that's returned is this value here, and we can see there's a ton of stuff, right? So rather than sort of have that ton of stuff sort of mask, our understanding of what we're seeing, let's just control C out there and run that again and say const test equals await. In fact, let's do that again. If we do CDS like that, and then we do const test equals await CDS.test like that, we can see that's a little bit better. We can see things now. So first of all, when we're just starting out, the facade, there's not much in it. Remember when we also looked at the env, it had to go and gather the effective environment, and he added it to the facade, and it was bigger. And now we've started up a cap server based upon the model that we have in our current directory, right? We could have also specified, CDS.test something else, and it would run something. Anyway, we've got that, and and it's also running on a random port. And I'm guessing that's because you might have another cap server running normally on 4004, so we don't want to clash. In fact, let's just prove to ourselves. Click on that. There we go. It's running. There's our server, right? Anyway, now if we look at CDS, you'll see it's massive. So we can go back to the inspect depth 0, and we see all this stuff, including services has now got a value, right? And also DB, SQLite service, okay? And in fact, if we can have a look CDS.services like that, we get a ton of stuff. So why don't we do? Actually, let's just take a breath for a second. We can use, of course, .inspect CDS services depth equals 0. And already we're starting to see interesting things, right? If we put depth of 1, right? Inspect CDS services depth of 1. And we can see that there are two services. Two services? I've only got one service defined here. What's going on? Well, that's this one here, the application service. But of course, if you've been following Daniel's Art and Science of Cap episodes, shall I link to that? Where is it? It's here somewhere. There's a series post there, Art and Science of Cap. There we go. Bang. There. All the live stream recordings and also blog posts, copious notes are all available through that link there. Let me just paste that in the chat there. There we go. Back to there. Fine. You'll understand, or you'll recognize everything as a service. Okay. So the database is a service as well as our application service. But before we go any further, the .inspect is like a REPL only command, and we want to be able to sort of introspect and look at stuff using standard JavaScript for when we're sort of in runtime, when we're writing our plugin. Because ultimately what we're trying to do here is feel our way as to how to look at, investigate and dig down to find the @loud annotated elements of the entities in our service so we can do something with them at runtime. Does that make sense? Let me know if that makes sense. I mean, there's a ton of stuff to explore here, and I'm trying to compress it into a single hour, which is like, doing my head in. But anyway, I'll have a cup of tea. Let me know if there's any questions. There's no question too simple, so let me know. So what we'll do instead is we'll sort of start to investigate using sort of more standard JavaScript facilities. For example, right? Type of CDS.services. It's an object, which means it's going to have keys and values. So object.keys CDS.services DB. There. Is that bigger by the way? We can make it bigger, right? But let's get rid of this for now. Remember this out loud on the genre element. Okay, that'll do. Ooh, out there. Let's close that and close that. So we've got maximum space. Maybe that's better, right? We've also, that's a bit too big. We've also got bookshop, right? And there's the bookshop there. If we say, for example, object.values, I'll clear the screen to do that. We can see basically the stuff that we see when we inspect at a massive depth. There's a ton of stuff here, right? But we could. I'll tell you what we'll do. I'm going to create. I'm sick of typing in object keys and object values. Let's do that again and say vi or code stuff, and I'll say t equals type of type of x, and we'll have key equals object.keys and value v equals object.values. That'll do. And also we might want to log things as well, so let's say console.log. Okay, let's have those shorthands there. So now I can say I shouldn't have done that, should I? CDS REPL await, there we go, fine. So now we can say type of CDS.services. Sorry, we need to load it first, don't it? It's .help, see, .load stuff, and now I can say type of, and we can say value, show me the values of CDS.services, so just make it easier for yourself to sort of look around in the REPL. Okay, now what do we want to do? We want to start to investigate. So why don't we sort of start to think about how we might use sort of helper functions to noodle through this information. So if I were to say, for example, CDS.services, what we'll do, we'll use some destructuring. So CDS.services is an object, right? So we know that already. Type CDS.services, which means, and we know the keys CDS.services are those. So we can pull out the bookshop property, okay, by doing this. We could say bookshop equals CDS.services. That's using destructuring. And now in bookshop, we have that, right? By the way, maybe I could start another REPL. Let's try it. I've never done that before. So a second REPL. Let's open up this thing here. Let's do that. CDS REPL and -- run this thing here. And I just want to show you, you can get the equivalent of doing that by getting access to the services by running it like this, and it will by default give you, ignore this empty thing for now, that's another story. It will give you, this is like beta stuff, a global call bookshop already. Okay, so we can do that with -- run, okay, or -r, but we're just doing it sort of manually for now. There we go, that's that. So we've got CDS services, right? So bookshop is that. So what is that? Bookshop. It's also an object. So why don't we have a look at the keys of bookshop? Bookshop. We can see that it's the bookshop service. From the service, we can access the entities. In fact, let's bring back into here the services there. Let's put my head on the bottom there so we can sort of see. And let's put that back again. Is that better? There we go. Perfect. Okay. Is it possible to connect REPL session to already running server? Oh, that's a good question. Can I get back to you on that towards the end, if we can, AP? That's a really good question, right? Yeah, remind me. I'm just conscious of time. It's like 8:26 already. Oh my goodness me. So we've got the bookshop service, and we've got two entities. So why don't we try and access the entities? Bookshop.entities. Now that's weird. It's a function. So shall we call that? No, that's not happening. Can anybody tell me what this thing is? Bookshop.entities. Right? Linked definitions. If you have a look, in fact, I sort of tweeted, no, what's the word in Blue Skyed, something yesterday. LinkedIn definitions is this class, which is, and any Python programmers, including Christian, will recognize this, which is an iterator, or it implements the iterator protocol. So this entities thing is an iterable, okay, which means that you can't just grab the values. You have to sort of use JavaScript mechanisms to access those, to access the values that are yielded by the iterator mechanics. One way of doing that, for example, is for x in bookshop.entities. This will sort of pull out the values of a, well, actually pull out the keys of an iterable, log x books and things. We can also use for x of, right? That's sort of the brother and sister things in my brain. Therefore, x of bookshop entities, and we can get the actual entities, right? We can also, because the rest operator dot, which is sort of the same as the spread operator, but the other side of the coin, we can do this as well. So dot bookshop.entities. Right? Does that make sense? Let me know in the chat. Anyway, there's so much to explore here, but I want to make sure we get to the stage where we've found this genre element being annotated by this @loud thing. Does that make sense? Okay, so if we were, for example, to let's just grab the entities. Entities equals. In fact, I'm going to use the short variable name e, because I'm just sick of typing. Entities equals bookshop.entities. That will sort of destructure the iterable and iterate all over them to have them yield all the values and put them in E, and then E becomes an object. So let's have a look at E. It's there. So in fact, the keys of E look like that. So actually, when it's an object, this is a bit of a JavaScript thing. It's actually an array, but everything in JavaScript is an object effectively. So there we go. The keys of E are 0 and 1, so it's an array, and the values of E are the actual values there. Okay, so if we were to say, let's just start simple. If we were to say Well, we just want to have a look through programmatically the values of the entities, right? So we could say, for example, e.map. Well, let's just do that first of all, right? Let's just say spit things out. But let's say it was a bit too noisy. So we could say all we want is the name and also, for example, the kind. Okay, bookshop.books entity and bookshop.things entity. Right, that's fairly straightforward. And you can sort of extend that to, well, yeah, why don't we do this? Const basic info, I'll do basic info equals a function that takes something and just returns an array of the name and the kind, right? Let's do that. So now we can even apply that, for example, to, what was it? CDS.services map basic info. Oh, see, yeah, here we go. Of course, because CDS services is also an iterable. So we got to do that, right? Haven't we? Yes, there we go. ... There we go. Let me just do that again and make that bigger. Is that big enough? I feel as though it's not big enough. I don't know why. So we've got our basic info function, and we can then map that function over the arrayified set of services. And we can see as well that, yeah, we've got a DB service, which is a SQLite service, and we've got our bookshop service, which is our application service. Does that make sense? Okay, so what else have we got? We've got our elements here. We've got, our entities here. We've also got, maybe I should call it entities because it's going to get very confusing, isn't it? Yes. So why don't we say here, entities equals E. Okay, so we got, I will use the word entities because we've got elements as well, which also begins with E. So why don't we say now entities dot, or keys entities. No, what we want to do, yeah, of course, we've got two entities. Entities of 0. There we go, we've got kind and elements. Okay, so let's do this a little bit better. Entities dot map x dot name object dot keys of x. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now we're sort of starting to feel how, is it making sense, by the way? We can sort of start to feel how we might sort of use standard JavaScript mechanisms to explore, to introspect the service and the entities within the service, and also start to look at the elements, right? So if we say here, bookshop.books, we've already done this, haven't we? So entities.map, entities.map basic info. So we know those things. Now, why don't we start to look at the elements? If we say entities 0.elements, entities 0 elements, we also see that the value of the elements property of the first entity, bookshop books, is a linked definitions object. And there was, let's just take a pause for a second. In CapHire, there was, I do remember this in August because I put something in a blog post about this. Release notes, archive, parts of 2024, August, there we go. Here we go. This was it. Important changes. Removed array methods for each filter, find, map, sum, every from linked definitions, because basically linked definitions are not arrays. They are iterables. Okay, this is what the whole thing about, sort of expanding is not the right word, but sort of, pulling out the values of an iterable. Convert linked definitions into arrays before using these methods. For example, using the REST operator. Okay, so that's, that's where this came from. Let me put that in the chat as well. Why is that playing? Why is that still playing? I'm really far behind. Here we go. Right, anyway. And what's the link definitions? There we go. So really, really important to understand in terms of introspection. Linked definitions is at the heart of so much of the CDS model at runtime. Okay, so where are we? Here we go. Here we go. So we can see here that, in fact, if we do this, let's just, you know, in a crazy way, we now go from this linked definitions object, which is an iterable, to an array. Okay, does that make sense? So now we can start to think of how to start looking through the individual elements, because we can already see here, can't we? Look, ID is ID, integer, integer, key, true, type, CDS integer. It's always worth, I think, staring at the output of this for a little bit longer than you would normally expect to have to stare, because I think it really helps us understand what's going on. So title, right, is a string, type CDS string. Genre is a string, there it is over there. But also, as well as the type property, which is present in every element, we've also got the key property here set to true for the integer, because of course it's marked as key, that being key there. We've got another property, and I think this is so beautiful in its simplicity, in the way that it's been implemented. It's just another property. It's just another property, and the name of the property is the actual name of the annotation with the @ okay. I think that's brilliant. So we have a way of figuring out what's been annotated with our @loud random new annotation that we've just made up on the fly. Okay, and it's there. And there's no sort of formality. There's no sort of, oh yeah, I've got to sort of recompile the CDS model, or, you know, put some settings into the server to say, hey, by the way, I'm using a new, never seen before annotation. No, just annotate it with some random stuff, and it appears in a really structured way, right? The simplest thing that could possibly work, in a way, I think, anyway. So we can see here, we've got that. So why don't we write a function that we can apply to each of the lists of elements to produce a list of elements, you know, just thinking ahead to next week, where we want to start writing our plugin, where we need to find effectively probably the list of elements that we want to do something with, as in a list of annotated elements. Let's write a function, okay? So, I don't know, let's call it, let's keep that on the, should we keep it on the screen? Yeah, I'll keep it on the screen. Let's just clear screen and do that again one more time there. There, okay, with that in mind. Loud elements, let's call it that. Loud elements equals, what are we gonna expect? We want to be able to give it an entity. Okay, we want that. And why don't we, let's just start simple, right? In fact, why don't we sort of write it in line? Entities, what type entities? It's an object, but it is an array, isn't it? Yeah, so entities dot map, we can map over them. Okay, fine. So what we'll do is we'll say again, so we can see it. Entities dot map entity, and we'll return an object, right? We'll return an object of things. So far, so good, right? So why do we get two objects? Because there are two entities, the books entity and the things entity. So why don't we now say, I don't know, entity dot name. Oh, sorry. Entity dot name, entity dot name. There we go. Ah, I wonder if no, let's not even go there. So far so good. Now let's also add, I don't know, let's say entity kind. I mean, we're sort of reproducing the data here, aren't we? But we'll just feel our way, entity.kind, right? Okay, but we don't want to do that. What we want to do is elements entity.elements, and we'll sort of, you know, destructure that iterable into its component parts into an array. Oh, what did I do there? There we go. So let's do that again. Let's just clear screen and do that and put a bracket on there. So now we're producing for each of the entities an object, which is there, for example, where we've got two properties, a name property, and the value for which is the name of the entity from the entity.name property, and the elements is this list. Now, does that make sense so far? Oh, Transistor says, can entities as well be annotated and looked up in the same way? Oh, that's an amazing... Right, let's try that at the end, because I think we might have time. Yeah, let's try that at the end. I mean, yes, entities can be annotated. Of course they can, as we all know, I'm sure, I know and you know. But where does that appear? Let's have a look. That's a brilliant question. So let's get through this first, though, really quickly. Oh my goodness me. You know what? One of the problems of saying, we're going to do a 3-part series on something. I've got to make sure that each part I get to where I need to get to be able to do the next part. Otherwise, it's just rubbish. That's why the the back to basics on CAP was just like one episode after the other, and I didn't really have to worry about where I got to because I just said, oh, I'll carry on next episode. So, you know, this is why I'm panicking slightly to get to the end of this. So DJ, stop talking and get on with it. Right, so now filter, let's just move it over there a minute. Let's just have the simplest thing that could possibly work. We want something to take something. We want to define what we need to do. Come on, DJ, speak properly. We need to define a predicate function, a function that will return true or false depending on the condition of what we want to filter. I'm just going to return true for now. Okay, so we just, you know, and if I were to return false instead, you're going to get no entities, right? So we can start to see how this works. Are we okay on the same line? Yeah, that'll do, the same line. I was just wondering whether to wrap that down the bottom. No, that'll do. This'll do. No, let's do that. Do it this way so we can see the entire thing. There, that's better. Right, move it down a bit. There. Yeah. So we can carry on seeing what's on this side of the thing. So what we want to do is, in fact, let's just map first of all to see what we get. We get those elements, right? So instead, why don't we say, for example, the type? Let's do that. Let's put that there before x.type. So we can start to feel. There we go. Look, elements: CDS integer, CDS string, CDS string, CDS integer. Integer, string, string, integer, and that one's an integer as well. So is this making sense the way I'm doing it? I'm just sort of making this up, but there we go. So now we could say, what is the x loud? Okay, let's just return the value of the loud property. Now, what do you think we're going to get? Perfect. Perfect. The first element, tell you what we'll do. We'll do this, right? We'll say x.name and x loud, so we can see it a little bit clearer. There we go. So we're now saying map over the elements, and for each of the elements, return an array of 2 values. The first value is the name, the value of the name property, ID, title, genre, stock. And the second value is the value of the @loud property. Now, that @loud property only exists, doesn't it, for, where is it? Only exists for one of the elements. So that's why we get undefined for that one. We get undefined for that one. We get true for that one. Undefined for stock. There. And of course we get undefined for ID as well. So there's no, there we go. So we can now change this really. Let's put that over there for a minute. We can now say filter x dot. Well, we can't really do x dot at loud because that's sort of, well, let's see what happens, right? Let's see what happens. We're probably going to get a syntax error. X dot loud. Yeah. Okay. Invalid or unexpected token. So we've got to use the other way of expressing an index or a key into an object, which is the x at loud, like that, right? What have I done wrong? X dot loud. Oh, there we go. X dot loud. Now, I'm doing this deliberately. Equals true. Filter. There. I think that's right. There. There we go. We've got a list now on a per entity basis. Bookshop.books has elements type, this one string CDS. Well, actually we haven't got the name yet. And the bookshop.things has got no elements annotated with loud. But let's improve this a little bit, right? We don't need this. This is sort of a little bit sort of, it's not really tautological, but it's a little bit sort of, well, it's too much, because this expression returns true, but we know that this value is either going to be false or true. So why don't we just return this value, right? This makes sense. This is, sort of JavaScript 101 type thing, but it's important to sort of stare at. So that does the same thing. But really what we want after we've filtered it is the name of the thing, don't we? So there we go. We've got the list of elements per entity. Does that make sense? By the way, you're all very quiet. When the chat is quiet, I always think, well, am I just talking nonsense, or has the live stream gone down or something? But so put something. Is this making sense? Is this making sense? Let me know. Let me know. So now we've got a way of listing the things that we've added. Well, tell you what. Let's entities.map. Yeah, we can do that. Well, all right. I was gonna stop the. I was gonna add another. Let's format that as well. And oh, I wonder if it. See what happens. No, let's just kill that. Everything's right. Oh, okay. Thank you, Helmut. Thank you. That's. I know it's a stupid question to ask for me to ask, but that really helps me. Thank you. Okay, so actually, let's bring that across back to there again, and go back to the first of the two questions. Both questions are brilliant. While we're doing it, it's captivating. I see what you did there, AP. Brilliant. The first of the two questions, which was the second of the two questions, which was at. In fact, let's annotate the. Because things is a bit unloved, let's say loved. Let's say this is loved. I just made that up anyway. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. So we've got that there. One bigger. Let's go back in to the REPL. CDS REPL shorthand R -- run this. Okay. Let's use this new help here. See. Let's use this new -- run thing. It's the same as using the REPL's built-in .run command. Okay. In fact, let's do that. Let's try that. CDS REPL .run. There we go. Oh, by the way, notice that every time we do this, even if did you notice when CDS compile, we also got this loud starting up. That's because why is that? Let me know why you think we always get this loud starting up. This is a little bit sort of intrusive. Let me know in the chat why that always appears and what we can do about it. Hey Ulrich, Happy New Year to you and welcome. No apologies needed for being late. Nobody ever needs to apologize for being late. It's great to see you all whenever you turn up. That's great. So, in fact, let's do this now, otherwise I'll forget it. The reason why we always get this loud thing is because of the way we implemented it in the CDS plugin, right? There it is over there, above my head, I think. Yes, above my head. The default, so this is like this log function call is sort of shorthand for log, I think it's shorthand for log.info, right? But if we say log.debug instead, right? Now if we do a CDS watch, for example, we don't get that. Let's just undo that again. Save that. We do get that. Put it back in again. We don't get that. Okay, does that make sense? Because we can get it in debug mode by saying debug equals all, or as Daniel did the other day, debug equals y. How cool is that? CDS watch. We get everything, of course, right? Or we could say debug equals loud. And we get that. We get our own. Only get our own. Does that make sense? So now we got it under a debug thing. That's the way we've got it. So Oscar says, sorry, I have to work on the side, so I can't be so active in the chat, but it's still nice to listen. Thank you, Oscar, for letting me know. That's great. You know, it's really nice to have folks even just listening. Debug plugin. Vishal Quach. Oh, maybe that was an answer to the question as to why, you know, why it's always sort of appearing. It's always appearing because it was like at the info level or a level above the thing that's suppressed, which is, you know, so we put it in if we do a debug there, we only see it when we say give me all the debug, right? So Javier says it's a trace that log you have been defined in the service. Yes, Javier's on the ball. Exactly. Why am I talking about that? I've completely lost what I'm supposed to be doing now. Oh yes, here we go. We've now got this at loved. Let's go into the CDS REPL and .run. I like that as well. That's quite cool. .run. There we go. Now we've got bookshops, bookshop, and so the CDS services is bookshop. So bookshop dot entities. Of course, we know now why we get this and how to get around that. For example, you know, as we've known, for x of bookshop entities console.log x. There we go. There, right? Don't look at that. That's the answer, isn't it? But that's quite cool. But what we could also do, of course, is .inspect bookshop.entities, and we could even say bookshop depth equals 1. We could even, if we want, depth equals 2. There's no more information anyway. Oh yes, there is. Of course there is. Yeah, books and things. So we could say also we could set the depth, the default depth equals 1, for example, and now every time we do a .inspect, the depth used will be 1, right? As in, we've now changed it from the Schnapszahl of 11 to just 1, right? Okay, so there we go. So, thanks for that. I need to write plugins for restricting access to NTBS. Ah, perfect. So basically, Transistor, yes, exactly. So Transistor's noticed it as well. If we have a look at the bookshop entities, just like we get this property, right, at the element level for an element level annotated thing element. Of course, I added it to the title element as well. So we now get that in title. In the same way, we get an at loved property at the entity level, right? If I were to annotate that one as well, right there, save that. And we'll do this another way. -- run there like that in one go. Bang. Inspect bookshop entities. There we go. Look, loved equals true. Loved equals true. Does that make sense? So anyway, just to go back to that other thing. Entities. Tell you what. Let's see if we can do a entities equals. Ah yeah. Ah damn yeah. E equals. There we go. So we'll say entities, bookshop entities, and then we can say, let's go to the top there. There. So now we can run our same function. In fact, why don't we do what we're doing, in our plugin, say const loud entities. No, yeah, loud elements equals that, right? And now we can say entities map loud elements. This is one of the many things I do love JavaScript, because it has a lot of quirks and weirdnesses, but it has at its core, at its heart, some absolute beauty, including higher order functions that can take other functions, and functions you can store in variables, in constants, etc. So now we can see, really easily, when we come to write our plugin, we know the elements that we need to do something with, the values for which we do need to do something with. Pavel, hello to you from Poland. So it's 8:56. I've just realised. Sorry, AP. Let's maybe do that. Is it possible to connect REPL session to already running server? Let's think about that. Have I done this before? I'm confusing, because I used to do that with Closure. Already running server. You know what? I'll find out. I'll ask internally and find out. That's all I can do, isn't it? Because my brain's suddenly stopped working. Have we covered everything? I think we have. What I would recommend, and I'm going to try and write some notes on this. So we've got a blog post for this particular episode. So I'll put some links to the destructuring assignment documentation from MDN, Mozilla Developer Network. I'll put a link also to the, what was the other thing? The iterables protocol. Thanks, AP. Yeah, just write a few notes on here. But let me know if that was useful. Let me know if you're going to attend next week. The plugin that we're going to write is obviously going to be just a very simple one. We just want to capitalize the values of the strings, or the values of the elements that are annotated with this @loud annotation. But I think you can see, hopefully I've given you a bit of confidence to use the REPL, to mash it around. We haven't even, I think somebody mentioned this, we haven't, we are looking, we're introspecting. We're not even in the REPL got into a select.from bookshop.books. That's a CQL object, sorry, CQN object, CDS query notation object, and we can do that and say await and get the books and everything. It's like the REPL is just so amazing. Anyway, it's ice breaking. So yeah, there we go. 8:58. DJ, stop talking. Have a great rest of Friday. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next week. We'll write a simple plugin using the knowledge that we've gained in this session, and yeah, see what happens. Bye for now.